Ridley had said, this isn't a documentary, and it's not. It wasn't supposed to be documenting how things would sound at that time. So from a musical point of view, really, I'm just looking at trying to follow the arc of the story, and perhaps hopefully bring parts to the senses of the viewer that aren't necessarily up on the screen.
I wonder, can silence add any information on the story or the characters as music actually does? Welcome to this second and final part of this essay about the use of music in the film The Last Duel. This is the Movie FAQ, where we try to find answers and showcase the art behind the films and their narrative. In The Last Duel, we have two kinds of music. On the one hand, there is the objective one. This is the kind of music that comes from the outside and is truthful no matter the circumstances, creating a powerful aura that goes beyond any interpretation and that ultimately represents the perspective of the director of the film. On the other hand, there is a music that is subjective and relies on the point of view of the one who the story is about. This kind of music is combined within each of the chapters of the film, whereas objective music is placed outside these boundaries. In that sense, in the third chapter focused on Marguerite's truth, we see a confident woman that feels valuable but not valued by her husband or mother-in-law. When Jeanne is away, she doesn't hesitate a second and takes control and manages their lands even better than her husband actually does. Thanks to the music, especially a rhythmic and kind of medieval use of string instruments together with the percussion, we know she feels confident and strong-minded, while at the same time, she is having fun.
I enjoy doing these tasks. It's my pleasure. Henri?
They are all facets of a strong personality that makes her free in a time when that wasn't even an option. The theme is also used in the male characters' stories, where its variations add another subtext depending on the point of view. For Jean de Carouge, who believes having the power over everything and everyone around, his wife is sweet and kind and also compliant, even knowing the last one is a quality that has nothing to do with Marguerite. A peaceful and intimate variation of her theme strengthens Jean's own and subjective perspective.
It's a pity Pierre took that estate from your father.
Legris, on the other hand, gives her a completely different attribute. To him, an obsessive person, she is fervent, passionate, and so it is her music when he is dreaming. But apart from the main theme, Harry Gregson Williams delivers a lot more in this score. Musically, it has a lot to do with the dramatic parts of Ridley Scott's Kingdom of Heaven, also scored by Gregson Williams and probably one of his masterpieces music-wise. However, The Last Duel is a far more serious and sober score. The filmmakers faced the storytelling process with great respect to Marguerite and the horrific circumstances she suffered. It's in this sense that we instantly understand the fantastic decision of not using music on the battle scenes. And that's a strong decision that implies how critical the story is for our time and for Ridley Scott, who has always emphasized the action scenes with percussive and powerful music. We can go back to historic dramas like 1492 Conquest of Paradise, the successful gladiator. Kingdom of Heaven, as we mentioned earlier. The later Robin Hood. And finally, Exodus, Gods and Kings. In the last two, the narrative and dramatic capacity of the music is restricted to what's really important: the characters and their story. In that respect, there are also themes for Jean de Carouge and Jacques Legris, and the use Harry Gregson Williams made of them, or to put it more precisely, the way the composer avoids using them, is probably one of the most interesting features of the score. Jean de Carouge's theme has two different parts that defines the two faces of the character. On the one hand, he is a warrior from the Middle Ages, rude with no intellectual preparation, a guy that has devoted his life to war, and very important, that holds himself in very high regard.
In my company, he will call me sir.
In that sense, his music
Sir.
is kind of simple, or at least less elaborated than the rest of the character's music, and quite straightforward and energetic, depicting his impulsiveness. The second part of the theme is the music of the hero, grandiloquent and trying to create a majestic aura through a big orchestra and chorus. He perceives himself as a great leader and, as I said before, a true hero. But, as we'll find out, no one else around sees that quality in him.
Quiet!
There are some dramatic variations of the theme. For instance, at the council, shortly after Marguerite was
Tell the
assaulted.
story you heard today. Tell it anywhere you can, and to all who will listen. If the story is known across Normandy, Pierre will have to grant us a hearing.
This time, what was a powerful music now becomes a doubtful theme. It's like there is no honor in his music anymore, and he is very afraid of that.
You are risking my life so you can fight your enemy and save your pride.
The second part of the film focuses on Legris' side of the story. Again, the music shows his personal self-perception. In this case, a more elaborated score talks about a literate person, competent on languages and numbers. The tone is set by the use of a kind of medieval music with choirs in Latin, a language he masters.
Et adubus mulieribus unum.
This point has a lot of interest coming from Ridley Scott, who's always been generally critical of religions and particularly of Christianism in several of his films.
Acknowledge one baptism for the forgiveness of sin.
The filmmakers give this kind of medieval church music to the powers of the state, and more specifically to the people related to them, here the bad guys of the movie, making a strong simile. The church equals villains.
The wolves have not slept either.
Legris' second musical idea represents a relentless and feared warrior that always gets what he wants, using his strength assaulting women every time he pleases. This music is dark and seems to be built around an onomatopoeia expressing the presence of a dreaded wolf that quietly attacks its prey.
Marguerite, do not fight this.
All these themes and dramatic ideas are really great, but in my opinion, as I said before, there is something much more interesting on the use of music in this film, and actually, That's the absence of musical themes to tell us more about the characters.
Dynamic is a good word. What we're doing here is a good dynamic, which is silence. Silence is a dynamic.
Having in mind this is a 3-chapter film showing their unique and quite different truths together with their own self-perception, it's fascinating seeing how each of them looks at the other characters, but through the lenses of music.
When have I not been ready to stand and fight for my king?
You have. More than any other.
As we mentioned earlier, Jean de Carouge holds himself in very high esteem, and his music is powerful and heroic. In his version of the story, there is space for his wife's theme, but however, there is no music for Legris. At all times, de Carouge feels superior to his friend, especially after being knighted in Scotland.
Rise!
For de Carouge, Legris doesn't keep up with him as a warrior nor as a man, and there's no music at all for him.
That is what you prize. That sycophant.
On the other hand, Legris sees himself as a charming and cultivated man, as well as a dreaded and confident warrior. In his story, we discover Marguerite's theme, as we mentioned earlier, but he is so obsessed with her that there is another music that represents his insincere love for Marguerite. What captures his attention is her high cultural level and her taste for letters, equal to him and far superior to her husband's.
You are a reader?
That's why this music is refined and cultured with Latin choirs, very much like the literate parts of Legris' music where this feeling is born. But again, Jean de Carouge, his friend and forthcoming opponent, considered inferior in intelligence and skills, he has no musical theme in this chapter. From Legris' perspective, there's no honorable music for Jean. He's just not worthy of it. And finally, there's the duel. Now we're going to talk briefly about the last sequence just after the fight. So if you haven't watched the movie, I warned you, there will be major spoilers from now on. There's something very remarkable about the music at the end of the film. There's a track in the soundtrack album called The Aftermath for that specific part, just after the duel, where the composer offers a powerful and kind of bright rendition to the winners. However, that's not the music used in the film. In the final edit, we realize the score is powerful as well, but also darker. And if we go back to the duel preparations and pay attention to the music, we'll see that the score used after the duel is more related to a sense of war. There is almost no tribute to the protagonist, and the only relief given to her comes from the use of silence at the end of the sequence as a reward to Marguerite. She is the heart of this story, and her music is the soul of the film. Almost everything goes around her. in this narrative effort by Harry Gregson Williams, a rounded score that deserved his first Oscar nomination.
Thank you very much.
But who really cares about the Oscars anymore, right?
Ennio Morricone. And the winner is...
Well, being honest, I do sometimes.
John Williams for Schindler's List.
James Horner, Titanic.
Michael Giacchino.
Gabriel Yared for the
Golden Globe. Dario Marianelli for Howard Shore.
So this is it. If you want to find out more about film music, go and have a look to our website at astroscore.com, where you'll discover lots of content and specials about your favorite composers and filmmakers, both in Spanish and English. Thanks a lot for watching. I do hope you liked the video. If you did, please click the like button, that will help us a lot. And don't forget to subscribe, and we'll make more videos asking questions and trying to find answers around films and their music. Cheers!